is a new rap song made by Eminem that was based off of the Marvel comic book character of Venom. It was so good and popular that it got spun off into its own feature film starring Tom Hardy and directed by Fulcher. And the plot of this film is that Sony is once again trying to start up their own Spider-Man-esque cinematic universe. You know, after it went so well the first time. Remember that? I didn't know what to think of this movie going in, honestly. I was really hoping for something good out of this. I like Zombieland, Ruben Fleischer's other film. Haven't seen his other films like 30 Minutes or Less or Gangster Squad, but I know that I like Zombieland. So I went into this film with some hopes. I like Tom Hardy and I like Michelle Williams and Riz Ahmed and all these people, but Jesus Christ, does this movie have a lot going for it. Some pretty weak trailers and a lot of history with Sony and the Spider-Man property before. And walking out of this film, I feel like an executive from Sony should have come in right before the movie started and told us, yeah, so you guys know the drill, right? Like, you know what kind of product we put together, okay? Okay, I just want to make sure you got that. This movie sucks so much, and that really sucks to say because there's actually a couple things with the character of Eddie Brock that they get kind of right. First off, Tom Hardy's performance. I thought he did a good job. He was trying his all for sure, and I think he did a good job embodying that character. I know in the trailer a lot of people like to make fun of his American accent, but it actually isn't that bad when you just see the overall film. It's fine. And his character, you know, he's the upright reporter who's gonna find out everything that's dirty about these companies and exploit them. He's like a neighborhood hero. It's like, alright, that's like a different interpretation of the Eddie Brock character, but you know, you got Tom Hardy, he's making it work. There's also some aspects with his relationship and the symbiote Venom, and yes, they call it a symbiote. There's a great ADR moment where the camera zooms away as Jenny Slate says symbiote instead of symbiote. But yes, Venom and Eddie Brock actually have a couple good interactions with each other. There's also a couple funny jokes involving the Venom character that actually got me to laugh intentionally. There's also some jokes that don't really work. There's also a couple moments where I think I was supposed to laugh, but I'm not sure. It's really goofy though, so maybe it was supposed to be a comedy scene, but hard to tell. Those are pretty much my only positives with this film, so let's get into everything else. This film feels so rushed that there's no time to actually develop on the characters in this story. And it's a pretty lame story at best, so you're gonna have to flesh out these characters more and also make the conflict between Eddie Brock and Venom a little bit more interesting, a little bit more dark. And I know they're trying to push a whole new cinematic universe here, but really going for that dark side of the Venom-Eddie Brock relationship really would have helped out. It would have made the film a little bit more compelling. But instead, because they're trying to do something new, they're really pushing for that anti-hero kind of vibe, that after a while it just becomes a hero. It's a superhero movie after a while. And in every piece of marketing they call him an anti-hero, like this world's had enough heroes, time for some anti-heroes, but he's just a hero. And that really felt like a huge betrayal on what the characters were trying to be. It seemed like they were setting up something that could have been really interesting, and if you know about the Eddie Brock and Venom relationship in the comics, and just in Spider-Man 3 even, if you know what's going on there, then you think maybe they would have found a way to actually make it so interesting and investing with this film, but instead, because they're trying to push that new franchise, they're making it as corporately pleasing as possible. Like, well, fans want to see Venom, but we can't make a movie about a bad guy. Who would do that? So we're gonna try to really push for a hero angle. It's a huge detriment to how interesting this film could have been. Now we're just forced to watch this pretty lame superhero origin story that feels like it was ripped right out of an early 2000s era. Like literally, Daredevil, Elektra, Ang Lee's Hulk, all those films, Venom really does fit in with those movies. It really does, because they really have a misunderstanding on the Venom character at the end of the day. Sure, they got some jokes, right? He has a little dark sense of humor. He wants to bite off people's heads, and that's fine. But when you're watching the film and you see how they're trying to make Venom more anti-hero, you're kind of wondering like, oh, okay, you really don't understand Venom at all. The fact that you think you could make a solo Venom film without Spider-Man being referenced at all, even though Spider-Man's a huge reason as to how Venom becomes who he is, like, that really does prove that you have no idea how to treat this character right. That you're just trying to stick it at Marvel. Like, yeah, you may have done Spider-Man correctly, but we can do Venom right? Right, guys? Right? No? Oh, shoot. Honestly, this movie's so poorly made that I forgot about the R-rated controversy. This movie feels like it was literally made from the beginning to be a PG-13. I know that there was like 40 minutes of the film cut or something with Tom Hardy saying that in the news recently, but it really does feel like the finished product, it was like they were trying to go for a PG-13 the whole time. So once again, another misunderstanding of the Venom character, and though there are a couple good moments where they actually write some good jokes for him, and they actually have a good interaction going with Tom Hardy and himself, basically, because he's voicing Venom, at the end of the day, none of that really matters if you can't make the movie great, if you can't flesh out this relationship to be as complex and great as possible. Speaking of relationships, Michelle Williams plays Anne Weying, who is the ex-girlfriend of Tom Hardy's Eddie Brock, and they basically have little to no chemistry. Maybe they could have had some chemistry, but their introduction scenes with each other were cut off so quickly that you hardly got a sense of if their relationship was actually really working or not. Whenever they were dating in the beginning of the film, it just felt like they quickly filmed it and then moved on with the rest of the stuff. I mean, everything else about the movie feels like it was quickly made just to move on, but especially that part probably should have been fleshed out a bit more. At the end of the day, Michelle Williams' character just kind of resorts to ex-girlfriend who still cares about Eddie Brock, so she helps out by pushing a button later, and that's kind of it. Riz Ahmed plays Carlton Drake, who is the head of the Life Foundation, who are, of course, the secret bad guys, the secret business bad guys, and he's the big business bad guy as well, who tries to disguise himself as a revolutionary, seen it a million times before, and unfortunately they fail to make him even more compelling. They fail to really elevate what his character could have been. Like, just because this guy acts bad and evil and has some symbiotes and is doing some bad stuff with them, like, that doesn't automatically make me feel scared of him. And the performance, he's given like the lamest dialogue, the most generic villain dialogue, that it's hard for me to even say that he's fine at the end of the day. He's a really bad character, and seeing where the movie goes with him and that final battle, I thought it was just completely terrible. I felt like no emotions at all watching any action scene in this film. The action sequences are all kind of lame, to be honest. Not only is it littered with some pretty poor visual effects with the Venom symbiote stuff, but also just it doesn't feel that unique at all. Like, there's literally a car chase, and for the longest time it just felt like everyone was driving straight forward. And it was like, are you gonna like do some turns, like maneuver through traffic? Like, it just seems like you guys have been driving straight for the past 5 minutes. And also, the beginning of the final battle, it feels like the two characters, even though they're being knocked around like a whole bunch of places, it seems like they all just kind of stay in this one strip of area. It's like, are you guys actually gonna move, or are you just gonna constantly get punched, fall back like 20 feet, but then like stand up again in like the same kind of area? It's really lazy. There's also one action scene where they try to do something a little bit different with the symbiotes, and I was like, okay, that could work if I cared a little bit more, if I felt more suspense, but because I didn't care about anything that was going on, it was hard for me to really get invested with the idea that they were going for. In a better film, that idea they introduced could have been done much better, but in this film, not at all. Also, as I mentioned earlier, the CGI, Venom itself, it looks good. Like, design-wise, it looks really good. For a video game, for a movie though, when it has to blend in with live action stuff, terrible. Really bad. It ranges from terrible to It doesn't get any better when the final battle relies heavily on the symbiotes, and it's just, after a while, it just looks like a bunch of just weird oozy stuff just spread across the screen. It's like, oh my god, this is hard to watch, honestly. Actually, it wasn't hard to watch, because this movie actually breezed by much quicker than I expected, which is another flaw that I had with this film. There's one point where I was like, okay, I'm in the first act, and then later on I was like, okay, this is more second act, but then something happens where I was like, wait, this feels like something that would end the second act, but I thought you just started the second act. Or no? And then, like, at least 5 minutes later, it was like, alright, now we're gonna transition into some third act stuff. And I was like, whoa, wait a second, is there any structure here at all? It feels like you guys are missing a lot from this film. Oh wait, Tom Hardy said that there's 40 minutes missing from Venom that were like his favorite parts of the movie. Oh! That explains why it feels so jumbled and messy. At the end of the day, it just felt like Sony was really focusing on, let's just get Eddie Brock and Venom all right. Let's get them to a point where fans will walk in and they'll say, oh, I love Venom in the comics and I think they did a good job with his personality here. and then we'll make a lot of money, and then we'll move on to make a sequel, and maybe then we'll try more on the story. And I really do believe that, because everyone in my theater, they were applauding at everything Venom was doing, and by the end of the film, they were all like, yeah, Venom! And I was just like, okay, yeah, Sony just pandered to their audiences, they made Venom all right, so the fans in the audience can cheer and then want to see it again, tell others to go see it, because who cares about other one-dimensional characters that should not even be in this film unless you actually have them doing stuff? Who cares about some of the terrible action sequences and terrible visual effects? Who cares about the terrible editing and flow of this film, where the flow of events just feels like stuff's happening just because they needed it to happen and they wanted to move on? Nah, Venom's alright, so this is a good movie. And this is also one of those films where the end scene of the film, before they get to the post-credit scenes, is literally in the trailer. I can't tell you which one, because spoiler, I guess, but if you've seen the Venom trailers, think back for a second. You might be able to think of exactly what the end scene of this film is. There you go. Thanks, Sony. You put another end scene in the trailers for your film. I wanted to touch on the post-credit scenes real quickly. The first one is pretty lame. They're definitely trying to do Iron Man-esque kind of post-credit scene. They introduce a new character that everyone knows, and it's like, oh, see, things to come, guys, things to come. But, you know, the difference between Venom and Iron Man is that Iron Man kind of earned that ending, and Venom didn't at all. Like, the entire movie was made just around setting up sequels, whereas Iron Man, they kind of wanted to make a good Iron Man movie. But also, the second post-credit scene, because that's the thing that's been marketed, is that there's 2 post-credit scenes. Don't stay for the final post-credit scene. Spoilers, not really, because they don't show a scene from Venom. They show 5 minutes, at least, of the upcoming Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse movie. And sure, it looks good. It looks like a really good movie, really fun animated film, but why is that in a movie about Venom? Why is your animated film now all of a sudden in a live-action Venom film that have nothing to do with each other? Nothing to do with each other at all, other than they're both Spider-Man properties made by Sony. But one's live action, one's animated, one's a little bit more kid-friendly, one's a little bit edgier for the adults while also being goofy and corny. It's literally a flashback for me for Amazing Spider-Man 2 when they did the same thing, but it was for like a different studio. It literally had nothing to do with anything. They put in that scene from X-Men Days of Future Past in the post-credit scene for the Amazing Spider-Man 2, and I have no idea why they did that, and then I found out, oh, it's for commercial purposes, and then, for this film, they're doing it again, except it's for one of their movies. Sony! Stop! Just sell everything to Disney at this point. Like, I hate that Disney's owning everything too, but Jesus Christ, if you can't get it right for like, what is this, the 50th time? Get rid of it already. Maybe that animated property will work for you, but Jesus Christ, stop. Please stop with this. I'm sure this is going to make a lot of money this weekend, so you're not going to listen to what anyone says at all. You're going to continue on with this dumb cinematic universe you started, but Jesus Christ, please. This is painful to sit through. Stop! I'm gonna give Venom a D+. I did like Tom Hardy as the Eddie Brock character that they set up in this film, obviously, despite it being very different from Eddie Brock's that we've seen before. Him and Venom had a good interaction with each other, and there's a couple of funny jokes whenever it was intentional. Whenever it was unintentional, I can't really say that that's a plus for the movie because it's unintentional laughter. This movie's poorly made. The script is just, it definitely feels like there are pages missing, which there were because they edited it out of the movie according to that interview. The action sequences feel so stale. The visual effects do nothing to dazzle me. The musical score, it just feels so generic like any other superhero kind of score. And Jesus Christ, when they cut to black and directed by Ruben Fleischer came up on the screen, and then they started playing the Eminem rap, I almost cringed in my seat harder than I have with a lot of movies recently. I can't really say that this is like the worst movie of the year or one of the worst movies of the year, but it's just really bad, and it's just very disappointing that Sony once again refuses to learn, refuses to take any notes on what other properties have done. They're just like, yeah, we're just gonna do it our way. Oh shoot, we failed. Let's do it again, our way. We messed up again. But if you've seen Venom, leave in the comments below what you thought of it. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.